The following content is brought to you by Chorlton Evangelical Church, in Manchester, UK. Our location is M21, 9FG. Our Sunday services are at 11 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. For more information, visit our website, chorltonevangelical.org.
Well, we're going to turn to the first of our Bible readings, Isaiah and chapter 9. Isaiah, the Old Testament prophet, in chapter 9. If you're using a Bible that you were given as you came into church this morning, you'll find our reading on page 573. Page 573 for the prophet Isaiah. This is the book of his prophecies. And this is a very famous prophecy of Isaiah, written hundreds of years before the birth of Christ. And Isaiah says this, we'll read from verse 2 down to verse 7. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. You have multiplied the nation, you have increased its joy. They rejoice before you with joy as at the harvest. They are glad when they divide the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff for his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor have been broken, as on the day of Midian. For every boot of the trampling warrior in battle tumult, and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counsellor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. Well, that's the prophecy of Isaiah. And as I say, written hundreds of years before the birth of Jesus. And yet it's still as relevant today as it was when Isaiah first spoke those words. For if we look at our modern culture today, we see a society that seems to have gained the whole world and yet lost its soul. For we're surrounded by flickering screens and high-speed internet connections and perhaps more material comforts than any generation in history. And yet there is a profound darkness in our society. There is an aching sense of emptiness among many people. And there are people who are walking in a thick existential fog. We've got plenty of information. We've got more information than we've ever had in our lives, and yet we lack direction. And we've got plenty of content, more content than we know what to do with. But we've got no meaning. And in the secular Western world, we're often told that we are nothing more than just biological accidents. We're just a cosmic coincidence, a spark of dust in an otherwise cold universe. Well, if that is true, then our lives have no inherent purpose other than what we can just create for ourselves until the clock runs out. Now that is a very heavy and dark message with which to open up a carol service. But in the prophecy that we have read in the book of Isaiah, that is exactly how Isaiah begins. He describes a land of deep darkness. But Isaiah's prophecy, which is written centuries before Jesus comes, it also offers an answer. For he speaks of a light that comes into the darkness, a light that dawns upon us not from within but from the outside. And Isaiah tells us that our purpose isn't something that we have to invent. It is something, indeed, it is someone who has been promised to us from of old, from ancient of days. And Isaiah identifies the root of our darkness, not as a lack of education or as a lack of any political progress, but our darkness is a lack of God. We're in the dark because we've turned away from the one who is the source of all light. And we're lost because we have wandered away from the only one that can give our lives foundation. Now, Isaiah promised a child. A child. It is a child that is the answer to the darkness, and that this child will carry government upon his shoulders. And oh, we spend our lives trying to carry the governance of our own lives upon our own shoulders, don't we? We want to be the ones who decide for ourselves what's right and wrong for me. And we want to decide for ourselves what is value. And we want to decide for ourselves what our own future looks like. And very often we're exhausted because we're carrying all that governance upon our own shoulders and we're too weak to carry it upon ourselves. We were never meant to carry the burden of governance that belongs to God alone. But Isaiah points to the one who is the mighty God, who is the everlasting Father. This isn't just a sweet little baby that Isaiah is speaking of. He's speaking of the arrival of the Creator into this world that he might bring light and set things right. And this leads us to the very heart of the matter. Why must this child come? He comes because we're all in a state of spiritual ruin that we ourselves cannot fix. We cannot just be better. We cannot just try harder in order to get out of the darkness. If you are in a pitch black room, you can't just create the light by thinking about it. Someone has got to walk in and bring the light. And Jesus is that light, says Isaiah. He is the wonderful Counsellor because he knows exactly just how sinful we all are, and yet he comes to us anyway. And he is the Prince of Peace, says Isaiah, because he comes to broker peace between a holy God and an unholy people. So if you are feeling like life lacks meaning, if you are exhausted trying to save yourself and to be the savior of your own life, listen to what Isaiah says this Christmas. The child was born to us, given as a gift. But a gift has to be received. In order to have purpose in this world, we must all first acknowledge the one who made us for himself. And we must all admit that our own government has failed and that we need this child to govern over our own hearts. Now, salvation is not a reward given to those who have found their own way out of the darkness. It's a rescue for those who admit that they're lost. It is a salvation for those who will place their faith in the light of the world. Trusting in him is the beginning of a life that finally starts to make sense, because it is now a life that is aligned with the one who designed you and created you.